Hi, my name is Shea Khalid. I'd like to welcome you to this CCNA video. In this training, I'd like to demonstrate to you how to configure static NAT. Okay, but before we go into that, I'm going to talk about fully about NAT because in this series, I'm going to talk about the configure static NAT. In another video, I'm going to configure dynamic NAT. In another video, I'm going to configure path. So it's very important that you understand the concept of NAT in this video. So that's the essence why I had to write started with NAT here. Okay, so what is NAT? NAT means network address translation. NAT is used to translate the private IP address to public address. Public address. It's used mainly for internet purpose. So what does that mean now? And for you to communicate in the internet, you need to have a public IP address. Okay, and the way our network is always structured is that you always have a private IP address and a public IP address. So this range, let me use a circle here to quickly describe what I'm trying to say. Everything here, okay, is a private IP address. Okay, everything here is a public IP address. So for us to communicate on the internet, a private IP address needs to be translated into a public IP address, or else you won't be able to communicate on the internet. So on the internet, you need to have a public IP address to communicate. On the private network, you need to use a private IP address to communicate. So when NAT comes is that NAT helps us to translate this private IP address into a public IP address so that we can communicate to the internet. That's why it's stated here. It says it is used mainly for internet purpose. So for us to route to the internet, for instance, you want to go to your Google, when you get to the internet doesn't understand this private IP address 192.168.10. You won't be able to communicate with the internet with that. So your IP address needs to be translated into a public IP address before you can communicate, because the public, most of your internet services, your web hosts, your web servers are all on the internet. So your Google, your public addresses, your Google, your Yahoo, all of them are all on a public IP address. So you need to translate your private IP address into your public IP address. So these are the range of private IP addresses, start from 10.0. So it's either you're using any of these three ranges in your private IP address. So I chose to use 192.168.10.0 network. So this is our internet, and this is our local area network. So now, what are the types of NAT? There's what we call static NAT, there's dynamic NAT, and there's path. Now with static NAT, it means that a single private IP address is translated into a single public IP address. So what that means is that if I want to communicate to the internet, I need to ensure that I translate this particular PC0 here into a public IP address. So that means that if I have 1,000 PCs on my network, before PC0 can communicate to the internet, it needs to be translated into a single public IP address. So that means that if I have 1,000 PCs on my network, that means I need 1,000 public IP addresses. Wait, man, that's quite expensive, and nobody wants to do that. Okay, so what that means is that I'm going to translate what static NAT means is I'm going to translate one single private IP address into a single public IP address. So that means that before this internet can be routed to the internet, these pieces can be routed to the internet, it needs a particular public IP address. Okay, now for dynamic, it means the private IP address is translated to a public IP address from a pool of IP addresses. So what this means is that, let's say we have five five public IP addresses. So that means that if any piece wants to communicate to the internet, it needs to pick out of those one public IP address from the pool. So if I have five IP addresses, public IP addresses, so that means that if I have 10 PCs, that means that it's only the 5 PCs that try to communicate to the internet that can make use of. So it means that I can only 5 pieces of my network can communicate to the internet at a time. That's what the dynamic NAT does. So that means that it's going to pick a piece is just going to pick a random public IP address from the pool and make use of it to route to the internet. But for static, that means the PCs are located a particular public IP address. For dynamic, it just needs to pick one out of many, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or thereabout. Then for port address translation, all private address in the network is translated into a single public address using port numbers. So what that means is that in all of our network, this network here, 192.168.10.0 network, will be translated into a single public IP address. Now that's what most organizations use right now. That's where the ISP comes in. What they do is that they translate your local public private IP into a single private IP. So that means that everybody on your local network is making use of one particular IP address. public IP address to route traffic to the internet. So that means this PC is using the same public IP address, this PC is using the same public IP address, this PC is using the same public IP address. But the difference is that when the port number comes, that it's going to translate this IP address into the public IP address, but with a port number. So that means that with this, if it's translating this IP address into another IP address, let's say I'm translating my 192.168.10.2 into a public IP address. So what that is going to do is that it's going to translate it into 23.11.220.24.25. So this interface is 25, this interface is 26, so it's 26. Okay, 26. So but it's going to use a port number of, let's say, 100. So for the next interface, the 193, so another IP is going to be 192.168.10.3. It's going to translate it to the same IP address, 23.11.222.26. okay, but with a 101, okay, port IP address. So it does that for all the pieces in your network. So it saves us cost. It helps us to just make use of one public IP address, and we all go to out to the internet. So this is how it does happen. Most organizations just need to get a private public IP address, maybe one or two, or they could use the other one for something else. But for routing to the internet, all they just need to do is to have one public IP address, NAT it on their network. So all their pieces, their local pieces on the network, it's translated into a particular public IP address, okay, into that same public IP address, and everybody's good to go on the internet. But there's some basic terms I want to pay attention to. By the time we go into configuration, you get to see what this means, but I just want to give a brief definition. So something we call inside local, inside global, outside local, and outside global. Now the inside local means the private IP address requested for translation. So in this case, the 192.168.10.2 is going to be our inside local. That's the IP address that we're going to translate, okay, that we want to translate into a public IP address. Now the inside global means that the IP address, if it so inside global, so this is the local address of the local gateway facing the internet. So the local inside global means the IP address, this is the gateway facing the internet. The IP address facing the internet, this is the local, global, inside global. So we're going to use this IP address. So it's still going to be a local IP address, okay. So it's going to be 190.168.10.1. that's the IP address of this router. So that's what we're going to have as our inside global. Then for our outside local, this is what we're going to have. This public, this is the private address on the perimeter device with the public address. So that means this is on this interface, okay, I think I make a wrong typing here, but what this means is that this interface here is going to be an outside local, because it's the perimeter network, a perimeter device facing our internet, okay. So but the interface facing the internet is going to call our outside local. Then the outside global is the interface that we actually really want to translate into, okay. So that's the concept. So in this demonstration, this one demonstrate how you can actually translate your public IP address into how you can actually translate your private IP address into a public IP address. So what the goal of it is to ensure that this PC here, PC0, can ping PC1, can ping this router 1 here. Now the thing about it is that this router is not aware of this particular network, okay, because for a router for you to be able to ping this particular router, it needs to have this network in its routing table. But I've actually configured it, so let me show you. I just added IP addresses to it. I've really not done any major configuration. If I do show IP route, it's going to show me my route. So this is the only route that we have in this network. So I should be able to reach this PC, should be able to have the routing protocol of it should have this network 192.168 network in its routing table, okay, or else we won't be able to ping it. But this router knows about this particular router, so actually we're good. So we don't need to configure any routing protocols to do that. So but the essence is that this particular PC should translate its IP address, its public IP, local IP address, into a particular public IP address, okay, before it can relate with this interface, okay. So that is the essence. So that means that we're going to translate this IP address into this interface before we can reach this interface, otherwise we won't be able to do that. So after this video, we're going to go into configuring dynamic and configuring part. So for this video, let's quickly go into configuring static NAT. So let's go. In this IP, in this route, I've actually configured the IP addresses. So if I just show IP route, this is my default. Oh, this is my routing table. Sorry. Show IP interface brief. So this is my local gateway. I've configured my local gateway. This is my outside local IP address. Okay, so everything is fine. So all I need to do is that. So before we go into that, I also need to configure, show you something. Now, if traffic is going in here, we need to, when you after configuring your NAT, you need to assign it to interfaces, or else your NAT configuration won't work. So the way traffic flows, that is how we're going to apply it on the interface. So if you look at it, the traffic is going out here. So this space is going to be inside. Okay, it's going here, and this space is going to be outside. Okay, traffic is going in here because it's coming. I'm going to translate from here into here. So traffic is going in here. So this space is going to be inside. Traffic is going to go in here and it's going to come out outside here. So this interface is going to be our IP inside NAT. So and this interface is going to be our outside NAT. So it's the flow of traffic. Traffic flows like this. It flows in here and it flows out through this interface. So that's how I'm going to configure it. So the first thing I need to do is first to configure my NAT. So I go into my interface, my global configuration mode, conf T. And first of all, let's first do apply it to the interfaces before we go configure it, because you might actually forget. So interface FA0 So I'm going to add my IP NAT inside. Okay, we said that's going to be our inside. So interface S020. So I'm going to do that as my IP NAT outside. Okay, so that now that we've configured that, so we're good to go. So it's to configure the NAT. So to do that, you do IP NAT. Okay, you do your source static. So which IP address you want to use as your static IP? Yes, yeah, IP inside. Okay, so the put is IP inside source. Okay, source IP address. So we do a static here. Okay, so static. So which IP address do we want to use as static? So it means we're relating one. Remember that we're doing static. Static means you're translating one particular local private IP address into a particular global IP address. So for our global IP address, static IP address is going to be 192.168.10.2. That's one of the pieces, IP address of one of the pieces, and the destination. You see, saying inside global, inside global IP address. So the IP address that we want to translate it into, that's what it means by inside global IP address. So we do 22.11.222.26. Let me see if I'm correct. 23.11. Okay, so it's 23.11. 23.11. Okay. Okay, so the IP address has already been translated. So if I do my end now, so if I do show IP NAT translations, okay, so you see it's going to translate this particular local IP address into another IP address, okay, inside global IP address. So this is the IP address we're trying to translate it into. This is the IP address we're trying to translate it into. So it's 10.2 to 23.11.22. So okay, so what we need to do is to go do a ping and see how it works. So my IP address here is 192.168.10.2. So what I need to do is to ping that interface. Let's see if it works. Okay, so ping 23.11.222.26. Okay, destination was unreachable. I think I used the wrong IP address. 23.11.222.26. Okay, destination ocean reachable. Oh, it's 220. I think I make a wrong I did a typo there. Let me see. I have to go back to my static NAT and configure that IP address because I used 2222, so it should have been 22. Oh, should have been 220. Okay, so let me quickly go back. Conf T up. Okay, 220. Let me put 222 just to ensure that I do a no first. In case I go back, remove this, do it 220. Okay, so I think I'm good now. So let me go back to my PC and perform the configuration again. Let me see what I have. Okay, yeah, we're good. Now let me test it with other IP address. So this is my PC1 now. I've configured with the IP address. Remember I said static NAT means one source IP address to one private IP address. So if I do ping 22.11.220.26, I should have an error message. See, I should have a destination reachable because it doesn't know of that because we didn't configure NAT for it. So I should have a destination request timeout. Okay, you should have a request timer because it does not know of that network, so it's timing out. The ping is going because it's going to get to this interface. Okay, but it's not allowing, it's rejecting it. That's why you're having a request timer because this interface know of this interface, they're aware, and this interface is aware of this. So the traffic would go get to this point. Okay, get to this point, we won't be able to get to this point. That is why we're having, even if it gets to this point is not going to reply. That's why we're having a request timeout. It's not having a request. So that works. So thank you very much. I hope this video has been informative to you. I also want to thank you for viewing. Have a nice day.